So, Mark Hall.
I'm here to represent three-dimensional coaching in the 3D Institute, and it's an honor to be able to share with you. There's a maxim in life that applies really well to sports. It goes like this: if I hear, I forget. If I see, I remember. If I do, I learn. But if I know why, I commit. There's a lot of stuff you're going to hear today that I know in about 10 minutes after walking out that door, you're going to forget most of it. That's how it goes. There's some things you're going to see that I believe you'll remember. If we had time, we would do one activity. I'm just going to explain it. But I wish we had time to do it because it is a powerful learning tool. But above all else, I want you to understand why. Why this is so important. Because in understanding why, you commit. Dr. Daniel Siegel in his book Mind Sight, and Joe Ehrman, who we work with, has helped us to define some real why questions that you need to answer. And the first one is this: why do you coach? Do you have a clear, compelling statement that acts as a filter, a compass, for all decisions and all activities you make? Why do you coach? Then the next one is, why do you coach the way that you do? What's it based on? Is it based on best practices and years of learning, or is it based because pretty much that's how I was coached? Or is it just kind of an amalgam of stuff that I put together, but no real thread of thought through it? The third question is one that we rarely ever have thought of. And it's this: what does it feel like to be coached by you? What does it feel like to be on the other side of you, to be taught by you? What's it feel like to be your spouse? What's it feel like to be your kids? What's it feel like to be on the other side? Maya Angelou said this: people will forget what you say, they will forget what you do, but they will not forget how you made them feel. And that's true for all of us. What does it feel like to be coached by you? And then the last one is, how do you define success? And if you do not have a clear, compelling purpose statement of why you coach, success is determined for you, and it's that scoreboard that judges you every week, whether you realize it or not. Success needs to be tied to your purpose. Success would be fulfilling your purpose. That's why that is so important. Let me give you an illustration of the importance of understanding your why, and when you understand your why, how powerful that is.
Series is called How Do I Know? And a lot of times when people hear the phrase, how do I know, the next thing they say is what? How do I know what? But the key really isn't to know what, the key is to know why. Because when you know your why, you have options on what your what can be. For instance, my why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. My what is stand-up comedy. My what is writing books. My what can be going out with some friends to eat. In fact, another what that has moved me towards my why is a web series that we have out now called Break Time. So every Wednesday at 3 o'clock, you should subscribe to the channel. We do a series called Break Time on YouTube. So 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode. One episode in particular, I'm about to show you a clip to. We were in Winston-Salem. So Break Time, this is how it works. I travel the country, I do stand-up comedy, probably an hour and a half at an event. And in the middle of my show, I'll just sit down and start talking to the audience. And funny just happens. Or I'll meet somebody who's really interesting. So I met this one guy, and he said that he teaches music at a school. I was like, all right, you teach music, can you sing? And then I'm just going to show you the clip. Check it. So you're a musical director?
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro can sing, you know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got. here's the thing. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time I asked him to sing, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what has more impact because you're walking in or towards your purpose.
Do you know why you coach? Because if you do not know why, you can be technically sound and achieve things, and you can do pretty well. But until you know why, it doesn't sing. That's the important thing. And this is why that's so important. Because one coach will impact more people in 1 year than the average person does in a lifetime. That's the power, privilege, and position that you have as a coach. There is a caution to that, however. And the caution is this. That great power that you have requires great character for that to be a blessing and not a curse. Because there's a lot that's done in coaching that when power is used over to achieve our goals, a lot of carnage a lot of times happens along the way. There's a reason why 75% of kids quit competitive sports before they get to high school. There's a reason why. And we're part of the reason why. We're also the main solution as to why kids continue on. That's why if there's any of you in here that are coaching youth, anybody here coaching the youth sports, great. Your motto, your goal ought to be never be a kid's last coach. Never be a kid's final coach. They ought to leave you and say, I can't wait to do this again. Sure, there's going to be attrition, but let the attrition be, because as we get older, it's not a both and world, it becomes either or, and I'm going to choose to do this. But I did like that. This captures me more than that. But don't let it be because I had a not-head coach who robbed all the joy of the journey. Great power requires great character for that to be a blessing, not a curse. Three-dimensional coaching is built on the research of Dr. Jeff Duke out of the University of Central Florida, who was on Bobby Bowden's staff as a graduate assistant, continued to coach, but lost his why and got into the business world because that's what you're supposed to do. Did very well and then got fired by Disney because they lost a contract while he was sitting in a bar in I think it was London, England. He got fired. Called his wife, and his wife said, "Come home, Jeff. You're not the man I married." What happened to the coach that just loved what he was doing? And that put him back on that journey. And he decided to study you. And for 14 years, he studied the impact of the American coach in the culture. Developed a curriculum at the University of Central Florida, one of 8 accredited schools where you can get an undergraduate degree in coaching as well. This is based upon that research. But the first thing we have to ask is this, are you coachable and teachable in this process? Or are you rigid? John Wooden used to use this picture, and he tells the story that the utility guy was told, put the utility pole on the 100-foot mark. Put the pole on the 100-foot mark. So I ask you the question, did he do right? Did he do right? Ask the homeowner, did he do right? It depends. If you're rigid, sure, that was 100 foot. But if you're flexible and you understand why is that utility pole? The utility pole is there to deliver electricity to make life easier and more convenient for all people involved. That's why we deliver utilities. That's why. The what is where we put the poles. Do you think the life of that homeowner is made easier by utilities at this point? No. I love what John Wooden says. It's what you learn after you know it all that counts. It's what you learn after you know it all that counts. So here's the question for you. What is a coach? I do a lot of stuff with international students. We live right next to the university, and that's my wife's heart's passion, and so we've got internationals in our home all the time. Language barrier. Somebody says, "Coach, what do you mean by coach? What is a coach?" Somebody asks you that, what would you say? What would you say? What's a coach? Chuck, you've been a coach for a long time. What is it that you do?
You guide young people.
You guide young people. A coach guides young people. You bet. What else? Anybody else? What would you say?
Teacher.
A teacher. Sure.
Mentor.
Mentor. You bet. And those are words that describe what you do. But let's kind of put a definition to it. I like this one. Tom Landry's definition for a coach was a coach who gets people to do what they don't want to do in order to attain that which they do want to attain. And that's pretty good. Because if you understand the purpose of sport in the circle of play, it engages our imagination and our effort. And that definition, what you want to achieve is your imagination. What do I see that I can achieve? And then what are you willing to do? That's your effort. So it's a pretty darn good definition. But I like one that's even better. It's actually the very first definition of a coach. This. A coach is a covered carriage that takes people of importance from where they are to where they want to or need to go. Isn't that good? Isn't that what you do? You take people of importance. Every one of those kids that walk down that hall is some father and mother's son or daughter whose treasure is walking down that hall. They're incredibly important. They're a treasure. And you take them from where they are to where they want to or need to go. That, however, begs a couple of questions. Where are they? Where are we picking them up today? And where are we taking them? When and where are we picking them up on this journey of sports today? How old are they when we're picking them up on this competitive, adult-driven, competitive model of sport? And they get in this carriage, kids, we're taking you on this journey. How old?
6, 5.
5, 6, 7, 4. There's advertisements for 3 and 2-year-olds to join a club that will get them on a jump start. It is yet to stop its digression down. Chuck, how old were you when you got engaged in competitive sports?
7th grade.
Me too, 7th grade. Which means you didn't do anything before 7th grade, right?
Did it on our own.
And I had a guy yesterday say, and what he did was he kept setting his watch back because his mom said he had to be home by 8. So he just kept setting his watch a half hour back all the time or 2. So it was actually 9, but his watch said 8. Mom, my watch says 8. How many kids do that for us in practice? You played all day, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, I can remember at supper time, about 15 mothers hanging their heads out the door screaming for individual kids to come home, and none of us could hear it.
Anybody resonate with that? Anybody same thing? Yeah. When you think about what we did, we organized it. A tree was a base sometimes, and somebody threw a glove down because we didn't have a bag. You had to go around something, and then there was no perfectly groomed fields, but it was like the major leagues in our imagination. And we played hard. We played all day. Isn't that what you want your athletes to do? It might be something to think about, to say, well, okay, what did we do there? And is there a way to bring the playground back to the practice? Because that's the attitude and effort I want. Maybe that environment could be rethought. Joy is the #1 emotional motivator. We deal with that in our curriculum to remind you that joy always gives you what you want in an athlete, attitude and effort. But here's but the other thing is we'll talk a little bit later about where we're taking them. But that's where we're picking them up today, in this carriage ride, which I believe is why it's essential today for you as middle school and high school coaches to figure out how to capture their hearts. You didn't have to do that when I was coming through. You didn't have to do that when those of us who are older were coming through, because there was no way we were going to quit. We were just getting started. I had some coaches that weren't real great, but I just dealt with it because there was no way to stop. I was just getting started. Kids coming into your program today have had so many competitions so early that we have what we call now 12-year-old burnout. 12-year-old burnout. It's such a bizarre thing to me because it was impossible. We were just getting started. But understand, that's the dilemma. And thus you need to understand that you got to coach kids differently today than we did a generation or 2 ago. Because they'll quit on you, right? They'll quit on you. For 2 reasons. They've been there and done that. And they're tired of it. And because competition is life-draining. Play is life-giving. That's why we kept turning our watches back. That's why we couldn't hear Mom and Dad. Because it was so life-giving to be out there playing. It was self-rewarding. Competition is life-draining. It doesn't make it bad, but it requires recovery time. We use the language, you've got to get up for the game, because it'll drain you down. And it's not bad, but it requires recovery time. I had 6 matches in wrestling in junior high. You can get 6 in a day as a 5 and 6-year-old. You can get 100 in the summer. You can get 300 in a year if you wanted to. Do you think you can possibly recover from that many matches, that many games? You can't. And that's why we have 12-year-old burnout. Even with our really good athletes, they're tired of it. And they will quit because of that. But if you learn to coach their hearts, I'm convinced that if you have an understanding that this is the reality, a strategy to capture their hearts, people don't quit those environments. There's a reason why my daughter's cross-country team had 120 kids out for cross-country. And it wasn't because 120 kids love to run, I'll guarantee you. But they love to be valued, they love to have worth, they love to be cared for. They performed really well, but that was not why the coach coached. He could tell you why he coached. And his success was partly measured by the number of kids that he could keep out for cross-country. He was real clear on his why. And he had a strategy to capture their hearts. Because here's the 21st century athlete, right? This is the 21st century athlete. They got so much stuff bombarding them. And you need to understand that they're not, blind obedience isn't going to work. Intrinsic motivation by capturing their hearts will. Because what's changed? What has changed over the last 2 generations? One is this. 30 to 50 million kids are involved in competitive organized sports, and what's not on there is 75% of them quit by the time they're 12 years old. Incidentally, if you're a school-based sport, football is about the only sport right now that is still majorly school-based, but some of that's changing. Some of that's even changing. Sports is moving out of the schools. The 40 to 50 million kids, 7 million are in our school systems. The rest are outside of school, in clubs. ASO, youth sports, club stuff, AAU. 54% of those kids that you coach today do not go home to both biological parents. That number has doubled in the last generation and a half. It used to be in 1960, 2 generations ago, it was 27%. That's not a slam at all on single parenting or blended families. There are great single parents. There are great blended families. But we all, if we're involved in that, we know that that brings issues. Those bring issues that the kids bring to your practice. And you got to coach that. It creates this, and you've seen this in your sports, and we call it the over-under effect. It's the over-involved parent and the under-involved parent. It's this one that we have that we're trying to get engagement, or they just drop their kids off, or the kids are in a tough situation, and they come to your practice. And you many times end up being a father figure to them, or they don't end up having it. But it's this one that you see more of, isn't it? Somebody just come to mind when you see that picture? The over-involved parent, the one that you go, how come they're standing outside of practice just about every day at 3 o'clock? Don't they have a job? Got any of those? We actually have names. There's 2 names for these kinds of parents now. What do we call those parents? Helicopter parents. Why helicopter? Because they're always hovering over. You know what the other name that they have now for them also? It's called lawnmower parents. Because they mow the path as smooth as they can in front of their kids. They try to eliminate all the difficulties. Instead of helping them to work through difficulties, they try to eliminate them. Thus, when the kid gets a B or a C in class, they're calling them, how come they don't have an A or a B? And they're doing it to complain instead of saying what's good strategies and effort they need to have. They should be doing better. How come they're not playing? They're really struggling and they should be playing. Instead of saying, son or daughter, let me tell you, there's 2 things you control, attitude and effort. And I want to know, are you going to practice with a good attitude? Are you giving great effort? Because we all know this as coaches. We will see attitude and effort, and that gets rewarded. No, we just try to mow the path as smooth as we can for them. Those are the lawnmower parents. So I would ask you this, real quickly in a minute or 2, turn on your table, turn around to a group of coaches and say, what are the challenges and what has changed in the last 2 generations? Some of the difficulties with handling over and under involved parents. What have you done? Just briefly, just going to share at your table, one or more of those, answer one of those questions at your table, real briefly. What are some of the challenges faced today that you didn't, especially those of you as older coaches? What was it like before? What's it like now? And what are the deals with over-involved, under-involved parents? Go.
Today is the multi-sport.
You've been in a long time.
3 sports.
Which one do you want to answer?
Which one do you want stories?
Exactly.
Everybody's got to continue.
I'm gonna listen to you.
Pushing too hard. What would bring you? They're saying, okay, this I gotta know. Guys, well then that's where the kids, this kid's gonna talk to you, now they're just repeating what the parent. It's not the kid coming to
I have problems with looking for extra like,
It's just great. So that's what I see.
yeah, for all scholarship athletes. It's my fault when they don't finish with that. I didn't promote it.
Someone else pointed out, I don't want to do it this week. We should.
Yeah, I've done
Really, 3 months.
football league.
It's like play him more. He's got to show us. Right. I've got a little bit different.
With our 2-hour workshop, we'll give you about 15 minutes on this. We got 45 minutes in there when we do our 2-hour workshop. This one can go on forever. This is a hot button issue. But if you were a coach, who was a coach back in the 70s, let's just say here. What would happen, I'll ask you, what would happen if you had a problem with a kid on your team back when you started coaching? How would you solve that problem?
What kind of problem?
Okay, let's say you have if you had a behavior problem or a kid didn't show up, a problem that you yourself couldn't solve totally, what would you do?
If you had a close friend, somebody on the team that could talk to them, talk to a parent, let them know what's going on.
Because you can make a phone call home, and 90% of that time, problem solved. Mom and Dad take your side and say, I had a coach from McFarland, a whole coach say, you know what he said? So I call him, and you know what they also said? And don't worry, it'll never happen again. Now what happens when you call home? 90% of the time, it's the other way around. That's changed. That's one of the things that's changed. And the others I heard too, the idea of scholarships. Anybody dealing with those playing time, position, and scholarships, extrinsic rewards. Because now sport with our kids, because of all the youth sport, all the money, how much money do your parents pay for you to play up until 7th grade? Nothing.
Well, in youth football in our time, they pay something.
No, but you personally, in your journey,
When you were a kid.
When you were a
How much
kid,
did your parents pay?
how much money did your parents pay for you to go down the park?
They didn't have any money. So.
That's right. Still don't, right?
Right.
Still. How much money is paid through this youth program all the way up to you now? Incredible amounts of money. It is now not, and it's now not a sacrifice or an expenditure, it's an investment. And when I have an investment, what do I need for my investments? A return. And when I'm not seeing the return on my investment in my portfolio, I go to my broker. because it's his fault. When I'm not seeing a return on my investment with my kid, I go to my coach. It's your fault. Those are the realities of coaching today. But parents aren't our enemies. What you find out is you have to coach 2 generations now. You have to coach the kid and you have to coach the parents. That's a reality. What strategies do you have to do that? That's what we're dealing with. So here's the model. And this is the picture we want to give you. Incidentally, this framework, this pyramid, is built on a foundation. The foundation is your transformational purpose statement, is your why. But once we understand that, we want to flesh that out in this pyramid. And the first is this, it's the fundamentals of the sport. And we all know this to be true. Sport is physical, football is incredibly physical. And you've got to be good at that. You've got to know things like strength, speed, power, tactics, techniques, skills, cardiovascular. If I were to go to you and say, Coach, what's your strategy for preseason, in-season, and off-season strength training? If you're a middle school, high school coach, you can nail that. What's your strategy? What offense, what defense are you going to run? What do you do for special teams? You're going to nail that. What we have found in our research, personally and with Dr. Dukes, is that about 75, conservatively, more like 85% of coaches are level 1 coaches only. Meaning if I went to your practice for a day, for a week, for a season, and just charted everything you do, everything you intentionally do would fall into one of those categories. And you can win championships just at that category. People have, continue to. The problem is you usually end up chewing up kids along the way. Because that's a grind. And we can just grind better. We can work harder and smarter than everybody else. And if you do that, you can win championships. But 75% to 85% of coaches, if you went to their practice. That doesn't mean they don't believe that the other levels are important. What it means is they don't have any strategies to coach them. Level 2, things like motivation, confidence, emotion, team cohesion. You can throw in focus and goal setting, those kinds of things. This isn't exhaustive. This is representative. And Dr. Duke in his research and working with coaches found that these are the big 4. If you ask coaches where they're stuck at or what they're dealing with, extrinsic motivation, rewards and stuff versus intrinsic motivation and that drive that is in all of us to want to master things. We want to have purpose and mastery, and we want to have autonomy in the process. How do I coach those? Team cohesion, let me just, one example. What was your experience when there was kind of conflict, whether on your team that you're coaching, or I'd say go back, and when you were on the teams and there was conflict with teammates, at a practice, they're either barking at each other or you could tell that they were doing, lookout blocks because they didn't like the person. What was the solution when those issues came on?
0-9.
Yeah, that was the result. That's just right. But how do we solve that? What was your experience? I know what my experience was. They made us run. They made me run. Because we all know that running is the solution to human relationships. My wife and I, whenever we have an argument, we put our running shoes on and but solved. No. What is running a solution to? What is running a great solution to? Or a great strategy for?
Conditioning.
Cardiovascular. Cardiovascular. It is a great strategy for cardiovascular. Level 1. But when you don't know how to coach these higher levels, you will always apply. I do it as a parent. I will always apply a solution I know, which is always a lower level solution. We'll apply a level 1 solution to a level 2 issue because I got to do something. And when they made us run, guess what? We stopped fighting because we just turned and said, just shut up, man. I don't want to run anymore. Well, that's not team cohesion. But it is behavior modification, and that's better than nothing. But it doesn't solve human relationships. Do we understand that team cohesion is a matrix? It has 4 quadrants. It has an individual, a group, it has task, and relationships. And if we can identify those, we're usually good at team cohesion on individual and group task. This is your job as the center. This is your job, guard, tackle. This is your job, quarterback. And when we do that, when we do our tasks well, the play works. It's cohesive. We usually do well, but what about an individual relationship with each other and the group identity relationship? Do you have strategies for those? We can help you with that. We do. Confidence. Confidence defined is a belief in my skills. Are you able to identify whether this is a belief issue that kids don't believe they can do it, or is this a skill issue, they can't execute it? And which one do we deal with? We have strategies to help with that. And then the heart, the spirit. Incidentally, our research shows that only about 10 to 15% of coaches are level 2 coaches that actually have strategies for those. And then the final level, the issue of the heart, the will, or the spirit. The function of the heart, the spirit, the will, is to choose what you value and ascribe worth to. That's its function. The mind takes the information in, says, can I get the right answer on the test? The spirit says, will I value that answer enough to live it out? That's what's found here. Value, identity, purpose, worth, significance. And incidentally, if value is a level 3 function, what does the sports world value most? Winning. Absolutely. Results. Results trump process. When results trump process, ends justify the means. And if winning is the most valuable, if what I do helps me to achieve my winning, then we will keep doing it. But if what I do might hamper that, then whatever that is needs to bow down to it. Everything bows down to it. And here's what we learned in that. Where are we taking them? There is a Sports Illustrated had on the cover of a 1997 magazine, it was a drug use issue. All the cover was an arm with a needle in it on drug use in sports. Of course, since 1997, we've pretty much eliminated all drug use in sports, but back then it was a real issue. So they had a sports psychologist and a doctor, medical doctor, who asked this question of elite athletes. It was 198 Olympians and aspiring Olympians. You're offered a banned performance-enhancing substance that comes with 2 guarantees. 1, you'll not get caught. 2, you'll win every competition you enter for the next 5 years. Will you take the substance? 198 Olympians, aspiring Olympians, how many of them do you think said yes to that?
All of them.
I want to warn you, when you say all of them, what you're saying is that if I were an elite athlete, I would take it. You need to say 197. Give yourself a moral out, okay? I'm the one. 195 said yes to that. Then the same group, he said this. You're offered a banned performance and substance, 2 guarantees. 1, you'll not get caught. 2, you win every competition you enter for the next 5 years, then you will die from the side effects of it. Now how many said yes?
Half? None. 2.
Say that again.
Half.
Half. Half said yes. Why? Why?
That's what they
Instant,
value.
instant gratification, it's that winning.
Ultimately, it's their highest value. Ultimately, they're saying, here's why. Partly because we are really good in athletics with goals. And you've just said that you can have your highest goal. What we're not really good at is purpose, is our why. And that's a great temptation. These people have worked like you have for really hard for a really long time, and now somebody says you can have the prize for which you're pursuing. That's not our kids, right? That's not, because we don't have any. Well, first of all, every elite athlete came through somebody's program. And if you're not a level 3 coach, you offered them no help in that decision, because that is a value and a worth decision. And if you didn't coach that, and you let the sports world determine it, the sports world has told them that winning is the highest value. And now they got a performance-based identity. Here's the other thing we found out. The Hans-Beller Athlete Moral Reasoning Survey and the Josephson Institute. The Hans-Beller survey is it's 72,000 athletes, 17 years, male and female, middle school through college, middle through professional, on moral reasoning. And here's what the results they found is this, that the longer kids are in competitive sports, the less they make good moral decisions. That the default mode of sport is to erode moral character. The Josephson Institute found the same thing. Incidentally, do you know which group scored the poorest on it? Football players. Congratulations, coaches. You're now responsible for the most morally corrupt segment of our schools. Have a good day. Here's what it also shows. Because that's the case, football and sport is the best place to teach moral attributes. But the sports world won't do it. Guess who will? You, the coach. Because it's got to look like something. But if you're not a level 3 coach, what you'll find is that pressure to win, not even necessarily from you. You've got to recognize that this is your problem to deal with, but we're not saying you're the cause of it. Not necessarily. But the sports world and what they grow up with is so pressurized in the idea to win that you've got to deal with that. If you don't deal with that, those outside pressures can form. That's the reality that we know. I don't like it, but it's true. How do you coach the heart? How do you coach those things? That's what we want to help you with. We've got strategies for those. We've got a journey we want you to take with this. Because the bottom line reality is this. You can't be a tour guide to a land you haven't been to. This is your journey to take first. When you deal with the hearts of kids, it's always your heart that gets broken up first. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. We want your value, worth, identity, character, and significance to be found in right places so that you lead kids in the same way. Sports does build character. When I ask groups, we always come up with the same 5 or 6. And I say, what attributes does sport build? What attributes, why do you want kids involved? And you say, listen, we're going to build their character. What typically do we end up saying? Teamwork, sure, you bet. Teamwork, what else?
Discipline.
Discipline, sure.
Work ethic.
Work ethic. Perseverance. Sacrifice. Those are the ones. Well, I want to remind you, you can be a team-working, dedicated, persevering, sacrificing terrorist. They all apply. Because those are not moral. Those are performance attributes. And we need performance attributes. But moral attributes are things like honesty, justice, kindness, love, mercy. Those kinds of things that involve other people. Listen, love without perseverance is powerless. We need people to persevere. But one of those things act as a compass, and the other act as fuel. We need fuel. We need you to persevere. But we're asking, what are you persevering toward? Those are the compass ones. We need them both. We need them both. We're not saying don't keep coaching these. Absolutely. But have them with a compass that turns kids in the right way. You watch what happens to performance when you do that too. Performance goes up, but we don't bow down to winning as on top. We don't sacrifice our character for the sake of a win. We shouldn't. I have. Got a couple of examples. If we had time, you could say, why are we listening to you after I tell you the stories of what I've done? But we can change with that. That's the model. And we think this too. When you put the key in there, you unlock some great treasures. Here's what the research shows us you unlock these things. That when you capture the heart, and we know this, but the research shows it, that kids learn skills more quickly because they're more attentive. When you have somebody's heart, you have their mind and their eyes, they're going to be there for you. Fitness compliance, shorter rehabilitation time. You got kids they said, man, they sure spend a lot of time in the training room. Why aren't they out here? Well, boy, if you got their hearts, they avoid the training room because they're afraid that if somebody finds out they're hurt, they won't get to play. They need to take care of their body, but boy, if you got their heart, they're there to, as quickly as they possibly can to get back out on the field. The idea of more adaptable and freedom to create, it helps to eliminate, the reason why is because you eliminate the number one emotion that kids say, the number one that comes up with it's something like 70% of kids, when you ask them about the number one emotion they have when it's tied to competition. Do you know what that is? Fear. Fear. Fear always shuts down creativity. Fear always shuts down risk-taking. And you want kids to be not afraid. We don't want them to say, boy, I'm afraid to take that risk. But they're saying, wow, if we could do this, we might achieve that. When you do it right, kids aren't afraid of mistakes. They're intrigued by them. Because if they make a mistake, it goes wrong, they say, what happened? That's an intrigue. What do we need to do differently so that it works? The mistake, listen, you're going to have mistakes. That's all the process of learning. And when I'm intrigued by mistakes, I learn even faster. Some mistakes you say, that mistake is the process of learning the skill. That mistake is because you were not mentally tough. That mistake was because you were just lazy. We'll fix that. We handle it differently, but we're intrigued by that. So here's the key, is that what strategies do you have? We want to help you develop strategies. One of them is with Spotlight Drill. It's a great drill that we have that really deals with all 4 levels of confidence, emotion, worth. You can go online and you can, with our site, and we've got something to explain that. In our longer clinic, we'll do that. But the point is this. Level 2 issues need to be solved with level 2 solutions, not lower levels. Solve them with strategies. So the last questions I want you to think about is this. Do you have the foundation of our 3-dimensional pyramid is a transformational purpose statement of why you coach. That empowers your what. Think back to that video. When you know your why, your what has so much more power because you're walking toward your purpose. If you don't know your purpose, you will find out really quickly there's a whole bunch of other people that have one for you. That usually involves centers around their own kids. Your purpose is to get them a scholarship. Your purpose is to play them at quarterback. Your purpose, they got one for you if you don't have one. A lot of people got a wonderful plan for your life. You're going to find out. And then, do you have strategies? And finally, what legacy are you leaving as a coach? Are you getting invited to kids' weddings? Are they calling you when they got a struggle? Are you impacting them deeply and meaningfully? Because that is that. I'm going to skip this and just go here. If you'd like more information, first of all, who's got their cell phones with them? Get your cell phones out. This is the only time a speaker will ever tell you that. Get your cell phones out. Here's what I'd like you to do. The number, if you would put in the message in the phone number, if you would put 72727 and where you put a phone number, and in the message area type 3D4. What will happen is that we will send you an autoresponder to a link that you can check on, that we can get feedback from you from this presentation and from our website. If you don't have your phone with you, I've got some hard copy cards. On that, you'll just be asked, and we're not going to spam you, we're just going to send you something that if you want it. Questions like, would you like our online news, subscribe to our 3D newsletter? Would you like information on taking the 3D course for college credit? We've got this online 3-hour transcripted for undergrad or graduate. Taking our certification class. We have 17 to 20 units that will take you through motivation, confidence, emotion, team cohesion, the role of a coach, the purpose of sport, all of those things at 2nd and 3rd level, help you to craft a 3-dimensional or a transformational purpose statement. We've got a database of about 35 different strategies that you could plug into. If you wanted a strategy for confidence, we've got strategies for that, all of those things. In partnership with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, we have a faith-based version of this. We've got an academic version and a faith-based one. If you're interested in a faith-based one or being in a faith-based group to have a conversation on that, you can check on that as well. And then give us any other feedback that you have on our time together. If you take a moment and do that, I'll give you 30 seconds and we're done. But I'd like you to, if you've got on your phone, make sure you do that to get that autoresponder link and give us feedback. Anybody need a card? Anybody else?
Let's get those acclamations done.
One coach will impact more people in 1 year than the average person does in a lifetime. Let's make that impact a legacy that at the end you would have say no regrets. What a great journey, what a deep impact. Thanks for being those people who make that kind of commitment and sacrifice. On behalf of my own sons and daughters whose coaches who made a very significant impact on their lives, for which I'm grateful. None of you got the scholarship. I'm a little disappointed in that. But other than that, they've got a lot of college debt because of you. No, it's your fault. No, thanks so much for being here. I'll be around for any questions that you have, and then we'll get ready for the next one.